Hello, everyone. My name is Rick van Bruggen from Neo4j, and here we are again recording another podcast session. Today I'm joined by Nigel Small, all the way from the UK. Hi, Nigel.
Hello, Rick. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing very well. And you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you.
Yeah, the sun is shining over here. I hope it is over there as
It's
well.
it's it's pretty bright here as well, actually.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, Nigel, welcome to the podcast. And, we always talk about a couple of short things here. The first thing is, who are you?
I'm Nigel Small. I've joined Neo Technology last August,
Uh-huh.
and that was after being about a groupie for about 3 years.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I built the one of the Python drivers, so I've been hanging around the community for some time, gathering users for the driver, and gradually getting more and more into the database itself.
Absolutely. Well, the Python Neo thing is very popular, it seems, right?
It's definitely become a lot more popular than I ever expected. It kind of fell out as an accident, really, but it was it's become reasonably successful. I'm quite pleased.
Fantastic. Well, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you got into graphs and why you got into graphs, and of course, why did you get into Python Neo?
Ah, right, yes. Well, it kind of all started due to Jim Weber, actually.
Oh no, not Jim again.
Yes, yes. His name keeps cropping up. I worked with Jim briefly when he was consulting in a previous life,
Uh-huh.
and we stayed in touch. And I remember having a conversation with him at some point about databases, and him telling me that the old relational table-based databases were a bit passé, and I needed to look at these graph databases.
Uh-huh.
So having no knowledge really of what these were, and no knowledge of graph theory at all, it was not something I'd ever come across. Spent some time looking into it, and decided to try to apply it to my family tree, which was a hobby of mine at the time.
Uh-huh.
And so started looking at how I could store some of my family tree data into a graph. Python was a language which I enjoyed using anyway, from a hobby point of view. So played around with the REST interface, which was quite new at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Wrote a few bits of Python code to get some data in and out, and ended up getting rather distracted on the mechanism for actually putting data in and out, and forgot about the family tree side of it, and ended up developing those bits of code into what's now Python Neo.
Oh wow! So it's basically a wrapper around the REST API that you've built, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
What's
It's
called a
it's
language
it's
driver.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
So
one of the early ones. There were, I think, because the REST interface was reasonably new at that time. I was one of the early pioneers, I think, of writing drivers.
it's called a guinea pig, Nigel. It's called.
Absolutely. And it's been rewritten several times since to correct a lot of the errors I made in the early days.
Think about working with the graph database in at the first instance. What attracted you?
I think the fact that it was something different. It was good to get my head into something that was a lot different to anything else I'd used before. I'd worked very heavily with databases for some time. I'd worked as a DBA and programmer for about 15 years
Hmm.
prior to that, but had only ever been exposed to standard tables.
Hmm.
So it was nice to get my head into something else and see what it was like. And it was it was a challenge to start with. As I say, I knew no graph theory at all.
Hmm.
Didn't really at first see quite how this was going to apply to the vast majority of data that I'd ever worked with before, because I was still thinking very much in tables. So it took quite some time to undo everything that I already knew and reapply it to graphs. But
Yeah.
now I think I'm looking around at most bits of data. I was recently putting together some political data for a session that I'm doing,
Uh-huh.
and realizing that it actually fits very, very naturally when you're talking about uh, politicians who belong to a particular party and who stood in a particular election, and all of those things are very much objects you can represent as nodes with relationships between them.
Yeah.
And a graph now feels very natural for most kinds of data modeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To be honest, it's funny that you mentioned the family tree. I mean, hierarchies are graphs, right? I actually did a family tree of my own one day, and I discovered I was Dutch, which was a hilarious meetup presentation actually at the
Was
time.
that a good or a bad thing?
Uh,
I don't have much
uh,
opinion on.
let's talk about something else.
Okay.
So let's talk about where's it going, Nigel? I mean, you've been working on some really exciting stuff at Neo, but where do you see graph databases in general and some of the work that you've recently been doing as an engineer at Neo? Where do you see that going?
Well, the work I've been doing for the past few months has been on what we've loosely branded our new remoting project. So, given that I've come in with some knowledge of drivers and the interaction between the clients and the servers, um, it's been quite nice to fall into a project that's very closely related to that, to rebuild a lot of the protocol and the client server capabilities for the database itself. So
Is
we're
that
looking
is that an alternative to REST then, or what is that
it
exactly?
will be eventually, yes. We're looking
Okay.
at something that's going to be hopefully well more performant, something that's much more in the order of magnitude of performance that we see with embedded databases.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, yes, replace uh, a large number of the use cases for the REST interface. I don't know whether we'll end up replacing everything because there are still some good uses for having an HTTP interface for a
Sure.
very low barrier of entry. But the vast majority of applications, I think, will end up using our new protocol.
Okay.
And one of the things that I particularly want to do is to try to level out the experience across languages.
Yeah.
Traditionally, Neo's been very Java centric for obvious reasons. This is where it came from. This is its
Sure.
background. But coming from a Python world, I want to make sure that we've got the same kind of performance capabilities in Python, and then the same in PHP and Ruby and all the other languages that we want to be able to connect to
Hmm.
Neo with. You shouldn't have to know that the underlying database has been written in Java,
Absolutely.
because it doesn't matter what you're using, what stack you're using, you're going to find that Neo performs blisteringly fast regardless.
Yeah, so that's a first point of evolution, right? Where we're going with a binary protocol like that. That's a big new thing, right? And
Absolutely.
any other things that you see coming up on the horizon, that you think are really exciting?
Well, there's a lot of work going on with the big graph side of things. So not only are we making access faster, but there's a team working on scalability as well, and making sure that we can add new servers, make things perform in a linear way faster with each server that you add. So I think the capabilities of the platform itself are growing uh, very very rapidly,
Yeah,
and I think we're going to see a lot more installs, and we it's going to become a much more a mainstream product than it has been in the past.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Nigel, for taking the time to come on the podcast. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
And well, I'm sure everyone will have a chance to meet you at Graph Connect, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm going to be hovering around London on the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th. So we've
Yeah,
got the 7th is the Graph Connect day, but the uh, on the 6th we have an ecosystem day where I'm doing a couple of sessions to talk about the
fantastic.
new remoting project as well. So it'd be good to see as many people as possible.
Yeah, super. Thanks, Nigel. Talk to you soon, man.
Great stuff, Rick. Thanks very much. Bye bye.
Bye.